They say most marriages don't explode, they erode. Quietly, slowly, one grain of sand at a time. But I remember the exact moment I felt the first shift in mine. Like stepping on a loose board in your own house and realizing the foundation might be cracked. It was that night in our backyard, with sausages on the grill and too many half-finished conversations drifting through the fall air. We had just moved into the neighborhood 2 months earlier. A fixer-upper with potential. Amy was excited, new walls, new town, a fresh start. I told her she could pick whatever tile she wanted for the kitchen. In hindsight, I thought that would be enough to make her happy. The party was Amy's idea. A get-to-know-you evening for the neighbors and a few of our friends. Low-key, fire pit going, drinks flowing. She wanted it to feel relaxed. Mate. It felt like she was staging something, like the house, like our life, carefully curated for the right kind of attention. I was by the grill, holding tongs like I knew what I was doing, talking to my coworker Jake about how charcoal beats gas any day. He nodded like he cared. But my eyes kept drifting. That's when I saw her. Amy, radiant in that flowy green top I hadn't seen before. Low cut but not too obvious. She was standing under the patio lights, drink in one hand, laughing with a group of neighbors. Her body language was loose, open, too open. And then I saw him. Jason. New guy on the street. Recently divorced. Moved in a month ago with a suspiciously minimal amount of furniture and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He had that whole, I've been through hell but still look good in a Henley thing going on. The kind of guy that calls your wife trouble in front of you and acts like it's just a joke. Jason was standing close to Amy. Too close. He held a craft beer in one hand, his other tucked casually into the back pocket of his jeans. He leaned in when she spoke like her words needed decoding. And Amy, she didn't lean away. I should have walked over. I should have interrupted. But I didn't. I just watched. That's when she said it. Loud enough for everyone around the fire pit to hear. Who wants my husband? Cheap. He's harmless. Laughter. The kind that sounds like approval when it's really just discomfort in disguise. Jason didn't miss a beat. He raised his hand. I'll take him, he said. Silence. Just for a breath. But it landed like a rock in water. Ripples of awkward glances. Nervous smiles. Even Jake looked over from the grill, eyebrows raised. Amy blinked, smile faltering for a split second. Then she laughed again. Louder this time, tossing her head back like it was all so ridiculous. Kidding, she said. Obviously. But I wasn't laughing. And neither was Jason. His eyes didn't leave mine. I made my way over, balancing a plate of half-burned bratwursts and a beer I didn't want. My heart was beating faster than it should have. And that's when I noticed the lighter in Jason's hand. A silver Zippo, scratched on the sides. One I hadn't seen in a while. It used to sit on my nightstand, next to my watch and the book I kept pretending to read. I assumed I'd lost it in the move. Or maybe it fell behind the dresser. But there it was, flicking open and closed in Jason's fingers. Like a nervous tick, or a signal. I opened my mouth to say something, but Amy swooped in before I could. She slid her arm around my waist, smiling like we were still on our honeymoon. Everything good, babe? She asked, a little too brightly. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Just checking on you. Oh, I'm great, she said. Jason was just telling me about his divorce. Super fun topic. Huh? Jason grinned, eyes still locked on me. We were comparing notes. Amy laughed again. Too loud. Too forced. I was joking, she said, nudging me. You know that, right? Of course, I said. But I didn't. She tightened her arm around my waist like she was keeping me from leaving, or keeping me from seeing something. Her body angled just slightly between me and Jason, like a human shield. I looked down at the lighter again. Nice Zippo, I said casually. Where'd you get it? Jason shrugged. Found it. Amy's hand gripped my hip slightly. Subtle but noticeable. A silent plea for me not to dig. That's when I knew something was off. I didn't say anything else. Just smiled, nodded, and made some excuse about checking the grill. But my mind stayed frozen on that moment. The joke, the lighter, the way her body shifted to block the view. It wasn't just the scene that felt wrong. It was the performance. I watched them from the edge of the yard, pretending to refill the ice bucket. Amy's posture was stiffer now, more guarded. Jason had moved on to talk to someone else, but she kept glancing at him when she thought no one was watching. That glance, that was the real tell. You don't look at someone like that unless there's something buried under the surface. Later that night, after the last guest left and I was collecting wine glasses from the grass, I asked her if she'd seen my lighter recently. What lighter? She asked, not looking up from her phone. The silver one. The Zippo. Oh. She paused, then shrugged. Maybe it's in a drawer somewhere? Yeah, I said. Maybe. She didn't ask why I was asking. Didn't offer to help find it. Didn't look me in the eye. We went to bed without saying much. She curled up with her back to me, and I stared at the ceiling. I thought about how it used to feel different. Coming home, lying next to her. It used to feel like the end of a day spent building something together. Lately, it felt more like returning to a room where the lights had already been turned off. That night, her breathing evened out quickly. Or maybe she was faking. Either way, I lay awake listening to the distant sound of the wind brushing against the house, wondering when the unfamiliar had crept into the familiar. I didn't sleep much, but when I did, I dreamed I was locked out of our own home, watching through the window as Amy stood laughing with someone else, holding a lighter I couldn't reach. And when I woke up, my pillow smelled faintly of smoke. After the party, something shifted in the way I looked at Amy, and I don't mean metaphorically. I mean literally. I began noticing things I had somehow overlooked for months. Or maybe I'd seen them and brushed them off, told myself I was imagining things, like any good husband trying not to look paranoid. But once that seed of doubt is planted, you can't help but water it. Even if you don't want to, I started paying closer attention. To her movements, to her schedule, to the words she chose and the ones she didn't. A few days after the party, I came home from work early. She wasn't expecting me. The house was quiet, too quiet. Amy wasn't in the kitchen or the living room, and I didn't hear the shower running. I found her sitting on the bed, phone in her lap, screen face down. She jumped when I opened the door, like a kid caught sneaking snacks before dinner. "Oh," she said, adjusting the blanket like she needed something to do with her hands. "Didn't hear you come in." "I got out early," I said, setting my keys on the dresser. "What are you up to?" "Just relaxing. I've got a headache." Her tone was even, but her eyes didn't quite match. I noticed she slid the phone further under her thigh as she shifted position. I didn't say anything, but I didn't forget it either. That was the moment I started replaying old memories in my head. Memories that used to feel normal, harmless, like how Amy always puts her phone face down. Always. I used to think it was just habit, maybe to avoid distractions. But now it felt deliberate, like a tiny act of concealment repeated 100 times a week. Or how she'd started going on these weird grocery runs. She'd leave to pick up a few things and come back 2 hours later, with maybe a single bag and always some excuse. Traffic, lines, forgot something, had to stop at a different store. At first, I didn't question it. Everyone gets sidetracked. But one night she left specifically for lemons. I remember that because she said she wanted to try some new cocktail recipe she saw online. She came back with a frozen pizza and a scented candle. "No lemons. Forgot them," she said. "Can you believe that?" I laughed and said, "No big deal." But it was a big deal. Because it wasn't just once. It was a pattern. Forgetting the one thing she said she left for. The whole trip becoming vague. Another time, she told me she had a hair appointment at 4 p.m. She came home close to 7. Her hair looked exactly the same. Not freshly styled, no hint of a trim. When I asked how it went, she said, "They ran late," and kissed me on the cheek. I smelled something. Cologne. Not mine. Not even subtle either. A woody, musky scent that lingered longer than it should have. I froze, trying not to make it obvious I noticed. But she breezed past me like nothing had happened and went straight into the bathroom. She stayed in there for 40 minutes. I knocked after the first 20, said, Everything okay? Yeah, she called back. Just washing my hair. Gimme a sec. But when she came out, her hair wasn't wet. Not even damp. That's when I started writing things down. Notes in my phone, timestamps, odd details. Not to trap her. I wasn't even sure why I was doing it. Maybe just to prove to myself that I wasn't going crazy. Because when you're married to someone long enough, you start gaslighting yourself. You think, maybe I'm just being insecure. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe I'm imagining this. But it stops feeling like paranoia when the inconsistencies pile up like bricks in a wall between you. And the kicker? Her int asterisk Macy shifted, too. Not dramatically, just subtly wrong. Like she was going through the motions. One night, I leaned in to kiss her as she was leaving for yoga, and she jerked back slightly, then smiled like nothing happened. Oops, lipstick, she said. I just put it on. Didn't want to smear it. I nodded. Fair. But I watched her walk out the door and wipe her mouth with the back of her hand. No lipstick came off. The following weekend, I went through her closet looking for a jacket of mine. Found her yoga mat and gym bag untouched. Still zipped. Still clean. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than hunches and half moments. I needed clarity. Because part of me still didn't want to believe it. She was my wife. My person. The one who said always when I asked her how long she'd love me. And I meant it. So why did everything feel so temporary now? Around that time, she started bringing up her phone storage constantly. Like, ugh, my phone's full again. I need to delete some stuff. Once I watched her scroll through her photos and delete what looked like a totally normal selfie. Except I'd never seen it before. She was wearing makeup I didn't recognize and a top I'd never seen. Where's that from? I asked. She glanced at the screen, then locked the phone. Oh, that was from, brunch with Ashley last month. She wasn't even trying that hard anymore. Ashley had moved out of state 6 months ago. I nodded like I believed her, but inside I felt something cave in. It wasn't just the lies. It was how easily they came. I started to withdraw. Quietly. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to see if she'd notice. I stopped texting her good morning. Didn't initiate hugs. Let her be the one to kiss me first if she even tried. She didn't. Not once. What she did do was start posting more on Instagram. Mostly stories. Boomerangs of lattes, sunsets, candles by the bathtub. Things that didn't mean anything but gave off the illusion of balance. Of contentment. Felt like a distraction. Or a performance. I checked her location history one night while she was in the shower. She'd turned off her location sharing on Find My Friends. That had never happened before. That was the moment it stopped being suspicion and started being confirmation. Not solid, not quite yet. But enough. Enough to say, something's broken, and she doesn't want me to see where the cracks are. I started checking our Wi-Fi router activity at home. There's a browser extension that lets you see which devices connect and when. I was surprised by how easy it was to use. Not because I was spying, but because I needed to know. And what I saw made my blood go cold. On Tuesday afternoon, while Amy was supposedly at work, a new device connected to the Wi-Fi. Not hers, not mine, and not some neighbor's weak signal bleeding through the walls. It was a phone. I recognized the MAC address because I'd seen it before briefly that night at the party when Jason had asked if he could connect to the speaker. His device. Back again. While I was gone, I double-checked the log. It was connected in the bedroom. Same time as Amy's tablet. I stared at the screen for a long time, the names of the devices glowing like indictments. Amy's iPad. Jason's phone. Together. In our house. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the counter, trying to understand how the ground beneath me had shifted without making a sound. That's when I noticed something else. Pack of gum. Jason's brand. Same bright blue wrapper. Same obnoxious cinnamon flavor. Amy never chewed gum. Said it gave her headaches. So why was it sitting there? I picked it up, stared at it, then put it back down like it was radioactive. That night she came home acting normal. A little too normal. Hey, she said, tossing her bag on the couch. I forgot my keys again. Can you grab them from the side table? I stood at the top of the stairs, keys in hand. And I didn't move. I just looked at her. And in that moment, she hesitated. Just for a breath. Then smiled. Everything okay? She asked. I handed her the keys without a word. She walked out the door. And something inside me did too. Not love. Not exactly. But something close. Like maybe respect had quietly packed its bags. And I didn't even notice until it was already gone. I used to believe in gut instinct. That quiet voice in your chest that says something's not right here. But the truth is, a gut feeling is only useful if you're willing to listen to it, and I hadn't. Not really. I had spent weeks, maybe months, second-guessing my own instincts, telling myself I was paranoid, insecure, jealous, like a fool standing in the rain trying to convince himself it's just mist. But after that night with the Wi-Fi logs and the gum and her lie about the keys, something inside me snapped. Or maybe it just settled. I wasn't angry, not yet. What I felt was colder. A kind of stillness like being underwater. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. And I started to think maybe I'd stopped waiting for the truth. Maybe I'd started planning for it. The next morning I called in sick to work. Amy had already left by then, supposedly for an early meeting downtown. She kissed me on the cheek, told me not to forget to feed the neighbor's cat while they were out of town. I nodded, but I wasn't listening. I watched her leave like a man watching the tide roll away, knowing something was about to surface. The second her car disappeared down the street, I went to work. I started with the guest bathroom, the one she'd claimed to use to get ready before yoga. I'd always found it odd. She never used that bathroom until a few months ago. Now she was in there 2-3 times a week for long stretches at a time. So I looked, and I found it. A travel-sized cologne bottle tucked behind the cleaning supplies. Not perfume. Not anything she would wear. Cologne. Woodsy, musky. The same scent I'd smelled on her shirt that night she came home from her hair appointment. I stared at it in my hand for a long time, like it might answer the questions I hadn't dared ask. But it didn't speak. It just existed like guilt made visible. Next, I checked the nightstand drawers. Not mine, hers. Nothing dramatic, just the usual clutter of old receipts, earplugs, charger cables. But underneath the chaos, I found a tiny, folded note. One line, scribbled in sloppy handwriting. Last night was dangerous, and worth it. No name, no date, but I didn't need one. My hands were shaking, not with rage, not with heartbreak, with something stranger, a kind of sad clarity. The way you feel when you finally admit to yourself that the bridge has burned and the smoke is all that's left. Still, I needed more. Not to convince myself, but to remove the last sliver of doubt. The part of me still whispering, maybe you're wrong. Maybe it's all a coincidence. So I did something I once promised I'd never do. I checked her old laptop. Amy had started using a new MacBook 6 months ago. Said the old one was too slow, but she'd never wiped the hard drive. And I remembered the password. I told myself I'd only open it if things got really bad. I guess I'd reached that point. It took less than 5 minutes to find what I was looking for. Buried in the downloads folder was a zipped backup of her old text messages, probably created during a phone transfer. I unzipped the folder and scrolled. I didn't need to dig far. There they were. Jason. His name in her messages again and again. They weren't labeled as Jason, of course. He was saved as J.S. Contractor. Subtle. Almost clever. But I knew. I read the texts and knew exactly who it was. J.S. That pic last night. Damn. If your husband knew what you were wearing under that dress, he'd have a stroke. Amy. He was home the whole time. That's the crazy part. I left and came back like nothing happened. J.S. You're good at this. Almost scary good. Amy. Don't say that. J.S. Why? You like it when I call you dangerous. There were dozens of messages like that. Sometimes playful. Sometimes int asterisk mate. Sometimes oddly mundane, like they were living a whole other life inside our real one. One thread in particular nearly knocked the breath out of me. J.S. Can I come over Thursday? Amy, Clark's home by 6. You'd have to leave before. J.S. I'll park 2 blocks down again, just in case. Amy, bring the Zippo. He hasn't asked about it in weeks. My throat closed up. The lighter. My lighter. The one Jason had casually flipped in his hand at the party. I sat back in the chair and stared at the screen, every line like a nail sealing the lid shut on what we used to be. And in that moment, something shifted in me. I realized I wasn't going to confront her in anger. No yelling. No dramatic blow-up. That would have given her control. And I was done giving her anything. Instead, I took a *T of every conversation and sent them to myself. I emailed the photos, the note, even the router logs I'd saved. I created a folder called Exit Plan. Sounds cold. It was. That afternoon I met with a lawyer. A quiet office on the 4th floor of a brick building downtown. The receptionist offered me coffee. I declined. The lawyer, Lena, wasn't surprised. She said she hears stories like mine all the time. That didn't make me feel better. It just made me feel statistically insignificant. We went over the facts. The house was mine before marriage. No kids. No joint business. No prenup, but that wouldn't matter much. You're in a good position, Lena said. I didn't feel good. I felt numb. When I got home that night, Amy was already in the kitchen, sautéing something that smelled like she was trying too hard. She smiled when she saw me. Hey, I thought we could do salmon tonight, she said. I picked up that wine you like. I looked at her, standing there like nothing had happened, like she wasn't a stranger wearing my wife's skin. Sounds good, I said, and then I walked upstairs and deleted our shared Spotify playlist. Just like that, one less thing tying us together. That weekend, I began sleeping in the guest room. I told her I'd pulled something in my back and needed the firmer mattress. She said okay with a slightly too casual shrug. She didn't ask to join me. She didn't even offer. That told me everything. For a few days I pretended. I let her keep playing house. Let her hum through dinner and fold laundry and talk about the new neighbor's dog like we were still us. But I knew. I knew about the texts, the visits, the Zippo, the gum, the note. I knew. And I was already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally. I was miles away. There's a strange kind of power in silence. Not the cold shoulder, not passive aggression, but a complete, deliberate stillness. Like putting down your sword mid-battle and watching your opponent keep swinging at air. That's what I gave Amy after the truth settled in. I didn't throw her phone. I didn't scream. I didn't even say her name differently. I just stopped. Stopped reaching for her in bed. Stopped texting her when I was running late. Stopped caring if she noticed. And she did notice. Not right away. Not in the obvious ways. But in the subtle shifts. Like when I no longer reacted to her nervous chatter about Jason's new siding project, 2 houses down. Or when she wore the dress I always loved to dinner and I didn't say a word. The things she used to do to get a rise out of me, good or bad, no longer worked. That was my revenge. Not rage, but absence. It began with the mornings. I stopped asking her if she needed coffee. I brewed 1 mug instead of 2. I'd let hers sit in the pot until it burned bitter. When she asked, "You didn't make any for me?" I'd smile and say, "Thought you were in a rush." Then came the weekends. She'd suggest brunch or hiking or whatever half-hearted thing she thought married couples were supposed to do to feel normal again. I declined. Said I had work. Said I was tired. I wasn't. What I was doing, what she didn't know I was doing, was preparing my exit. Every smile she gave me now felt borrowed. Like she was renting affection by the hour, hoping I wouldn't notice the currency had changed. One night she came into the guest room, where I had been sleeping off my back pain, wearing a robe I bought her on our 4th anniversary. She looked unsure, like someone returning to a house they weren't sure they were welcome in. "I miss you," she whispered. I looked up from my book, noticed how she left the robe slightly open, like a callback to a better time. "I'm still here," I said, but she knew I wasn't. She didn't come back to the guest room after that. What followed was a series of awkward attempts to win me back without actually confessing anything. She made dinner more often, roasts, lasagnas, things she used to say were too much work. She restocked my favorite beer. She folded my laundry. She started using the phrase, we should, again. We should plan a trip. We should take a cooking class. We should visit your parents. But she never said, I'm sorry. She never once acknowledged the betrayal. And I never gave her the satisfaction of dragging it into the light. Because by now, I was done performing for a stage I didn't audition for. Instead, I gave her a version of myself she wasn't prepared for. Calm, distant, untouchable. I kept my routines, stayed polite. I didn't accuse her, but I also never once gave her a chance to lie again. Every now and then, she'd try to bait me with questions. Is something wrong? You've been distant lately. Are we okay? I'd nod, smile, say, everything's fine. And the longer I said it, the more it broke her. You can only hide from guilt when no one confronts you with it. When you're met with silence, you're forced to face yourself. That's what was happening to Amy. She stopped sleeping soundly. I'd hear her tossing and turning at night in our bedroom. Some mornings I'd find her staring at herself in the mirror too long. Not adjusting her makeup, just looking, like trying to recognize the woman she'd become. I started using a different cologne. Something unfamiliar, just to see if she'd notice. She did. You smell different, she said one morning. I shrugged. Thought I'd switch it up. She stared at me for a second, like she didn't believe me, and maybe she shouldn't have, because by then, I wasn't just planning the divorce. I was meeting with the lawyer again to finalize details. Our house had been bought in my name years before we got married. No cosign, no shared deed. My lawyer said, you're in the rare position of having the leverage and the documentation. Just stay quiet. Don't tip her off. So I did. I told Amy I had a class reunion coming up in a few weeks. Said it was back in my hometown. She asked if she could come. I told her it was just the guys. Old friends. Nothing exciting. Truth was, I booked a weekend out of town for a consultation with a financial advisor and a visit to my sister. Someone who'd never liked Amy but had the grace to keep her opinions quiet. I asked her if I could store a few boxes at her place. She didn't ask questions. Just nodded and said, about time. The day I started moving things out, I told Amy I was reorganizing the garage. I pulled half my wardrobe, personal files, a couple of books that mattered to me, and tucked them into plastic bins labeled seasonal stuff. Loaded them into my car. Told her I was dropping them at a storage unit. She didn't blink. That was the thing. She was so used to me trusting her. She never imagined I'd turn that trust into strategy. By the second week, she began to panic. Not openly, but in ways I could feel. She started checking in more. Where are you? When I was out. Who were you with? When I came home late. She tried to be subtle, but the shift was obvious. One night, she asked, are you seeing someone? I paused, looked her in the eye. No, I said. But that's an interesting question. She turned red, tried to laugh it off. I just meant, you've been different. I wonder why, I said. No accusations, no name drops, just a quiet mirror. She looked away. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, not even of getting caught, but of being replaced. Suddenly she was the one on edge. She'd grab my phone when it buzzed and ask, want me to check that? She'd suggest I put it away during dinner. She started wearing makeup more regularly again. Took extra care with her outfits. Bought lingerie I recognized from years ago, back when things were better. Felt desperate, out of place, like someone trying to resuscitate a party that ended hours ago. I let her try. I let her cook. Let her compliment me. Let her pretend she cared again. But I never gave her anything back. Because I wasn't hers anymore. I was just a man biding time in a house that had already stopped being a home. And she knew it. It was in the way she lingered in doorways. The way her voice softened when she said my name. The way she stopped talking about the future entirely. The power dynamic had shifted. And it wasn't about punishment. It was about perspective. I no longer needed her approval, her explanations, her excuses. I no longer needed to ask why. Because I already had what I needed. The truth, the plan, and the exit. And the best part? She gave me all of it, without ever realizing I was already gone. The envelope was thick, heavier than it looked. Clean white paper with my lawyer's firm printed neatly at the top. I set it on the kitchen counter like a silent grenade and walked away. No announcement, no warning, just placed it there where Amy would find it, like a mirror she couldn't look away from. I didn't need to be in the room when she opened it. I wanted the silence to say everything. That evening, I sat on the back porch with a beer, staring at the fire pit, the same one we'd lit the night of the party, back when everything started unraveling. Except now, the air was different, lighter, no fake laughter, no neighbor's music drifting in, just the hum of insects and the crackle of wood. I heard the screen door creak behind me, then silence. She stood there for a moment, not stepping out, not going back inside, just frozen. "Clark," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "What is this?" I took a sip of beer. "Looks like paperwork." "Divorce paperwork?" Her voice cracked at the end of the sentence, like the word itself burned her tongue. I didn't answer. She stepped outside slowly, envelope still in hand. "You can't be serious." I finally turned to look at her. Not angry, not cold, just finished. "I'm completely serious." Her eyes searched mine, like she was trying to find a version of me she could still control. "But we haven't even talked about this." "I think we've done enough not talking," I said. She opened the envelope with shaking hands, flipping through the pages, eyes darting like they were trying to outrun the truth. "You're doing this without even a conversation?" "I'm doing this because of all the conversations we didn't have," I said calmly. "Because I had to find out through Wi-Fi logs and router trackers and gum wrappers and cologne bottles and text message backups. Not from you." She looked stunned, genuinely stunned, as if I'd hit her with something she didn't see coming, as if I hadn't been peeling away piece after piece of this life for weeks. "You went through my stuff?" "I went through my life," I said, "and I found pieces of someone else in it." Her face flushed red. "I can explain." "No," I said, holding up a hand. "You don't get to explain. Not now. You had chances. You had months. You chose silence and lies and gaslighting. You don't get to rewrite the ending because you don't like how it reads." She was crying now, the kind of tears that come too late, the kind you hope will wash away consequences. "Please," she whispered, clutching the envelope like it was a lifeline. "Don't do this. We can fix it." I shook my head. "I'm not broken, Amy. You don't fix people you hurt. You apologize and let them heal. And that doesn't happen with more lies or panic dinners or desperate apologies." She looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I'd finally become the version of myself she feared most, unreachable. "This can't be happening," she said, almost to herself. But it was. The next few days were tense but quiet. She didn't leave. Not yet. But she avoided me around the house like a ghost. No slamming doors. No begging. Just a kind of stunned stillness. She cooked one night. Chicken parmesan, my favorite. I didn't eat it. She tried to hand me my coffee the next morning. I made my own. She folded my laundry and left it on the bed. I put it back in the basket and redid it myself. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. I wasn't punishing her. I was removing her. Eventually, she asked if she could stay with her brother for a few days. Said she needed space to process. I said, "Take your time." She left the next morning with 2 duffel bags and a coat she hadn't worn in years. When the front door clicked shut behind her, I exhaled so deeply I nearly collapsed. The silence she left behind wasn't empty. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. No games, no tension, just the quiet hum of a house no longer hiding secrets. A week later, she returned with her brother in tow. He was polite, too polite. The kind of polite that says I don't know the full story, but I know enough to keep my mouth shut. They packed her things in boxes. I didn't help. I stayed in the kitchen, sipping coffee, pretending to scroll my phone. When they finished, Amy hovered in the hallway. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't look up. "About what?" "Just us. One last time." I finally set my phone down. "There is no us, Amy. Clark, please." "I don't need closure," I said, standing. "I don't need understanding. I just need space. And you're taking up too much of it." She flinched. Her brother grabbed the last box and gave me a quiet nod before walking out. Amy lingered. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did." "I know." She took a step closer. "I was confused. Lonely. Jason just made me feel." "I don't care how he made you feel," I cut in. "I care how you made me feel." That stopped her. She looked at me like she wanted to say 100 things and didn't know where to start. "Goodbye, Amy," I said, walking past her. She turned as I did, tears rolling silently now. "Do you think we'll ever talk again?" "No," I said. "I think this is the last honest moment we'll ever have." She stood there for a few seconds longer, then turned and walked out. Didn't slam the door. Didn't say goodbye. She just left. And this time I didn't follow. The days that followed were strangely calm. The house was quiet in a way that didn't ache. I sat by the fire pit one night, just me and the crackling wood, and realized I hadn't clenched my jaw all day. That was the moment I knew it was over. Not just legally, but emotionally. She didn't live here anymore. Not in the rooms. Not in the bed. Not in my head. The papers came back signed 3 weeks later. She didn't contest anything. No drama. No drawn-out fight. Just a quiet signature at the bottom of a choice she'd made long before I caught up to it. Her lawyer called mine. Said Amy was devastated but understanding. Said she wouldn't fight the deed or the assets. I could keep the house. Good. I wasn't just keeping it. I was reclaiming it. One night, I walked into the master bedroom and opened all the windows. Let the air blow through. Took the mattress out myself. Got rid of the sheets. Threw out the pillowcases. I repainted the walls a soft gray blue. Burned a candle that didn't smell like her. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. Felt healed. Every now and then, I'd find something she left behind. A scarf. A bracelet in the bathroom drawer. A photo tucked into a book. I didn't cry. I didn't hold it and reminisce. I put it in a box. Then I taped it shut. Because some things don't need to be re-examined. Some things just need to stay gone. I sat by the fire pit alone. No tension, no pretending. Joan, a kind soul from work, joined me. We didn't say much, just shared burgers and silence. Felt honest. Amy stopped by twice after the divorce, once to plead, once to return a hoodie. I was polite but distant. I had nothing left to give her. Peace had finally taken root, and I wasn't going to let her or anyone else uproot it. She came at dawn, hollow-eyed, holding a list of things she missed. My dependability, my loyalty, my presence. All actions, no love. I listened, then told her gently, "You don't miss me. You miss not being alone." She cried, begged, but I stayed calm. I didn't feel hate, just clarity. The noise was finally gone. For the first time in years, I could hear myself. And I liked what I heard.